Roger got a 6% raise last spring. His manager shook his hand, called it a strong year, told him to be proud. Roger drove home, opened his banking app, and stared at the number for a long moment. Then he did the math. After taxes, the raise added $184 to his monthly take-home. His rent had just renewed, $90 higher. Car insurance jumped $40. Groceries had been quietly bleeding him for 2 years straight. The raise was mathematically gone before he touched a single dollar of it. He closed the app. He didn't say anything to his wife, Benzie, that night. What was there to say? Here's the thing about Roger and Benzie. They are not doing anything wrong. They pay their bills, they have jobs, they have benefits. And they are one $1,200 car repair away from a genuine financial crisis. My name is Franklin, and today we're going through 33 of the most brutal money statistics about the average American. Because Roger and Benzie are not unusual. They are the data, and the data does not lie. Let's start with savings, or more accurately, the near total collapse of them. Stat 1. 59% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency using their savings, more than half the country. Think about what $1,000 actually represents: a set of new tires, a plumber on a Sunday night, 2 nights in a decent hotel. And the majority of households cannot absorb that hit without borrowing money. Stat 2. The Federal Reserve found that 37% of adults could not cover a $400 emergency using cash, and 18% said the maximum emergency they could handle from savings was under $100. Stat 3. The average savings account balance in America is $62,410. The median is $8,000. That nearly 8-to-1 gap tells you everything about how money is actually distributed. For people under 35, it drops to $5,400. That's not a safety net, that's a transmission repair. Stat 4. The median emergency savings right now is $500. That figure dropped 17% in a single year. Financial experts recommend 3 to 6 months, $9,000 to $18,000. The median American has $500. That is not a cushion. That is a decorative throw pillow holding up the entire ceiling. Stat 5. When Roger's check engine light came on last October, he sat in a pharmacy parking lot for 12 minutes doing math on his phone. The repair estimate was $840. They had $1,380 in savings, 4 years of intentional effort. He could pay the repair and have $540 left, which meant if anything else happened, they had nothing. He paid it. He didn't sleep well for a week. Stat 6. Between 27 and 42% of Americans have zero emergency savings. 49% of women have no emergency fund versus 36% of men. The group with the longest financial runway to fund has the shortest savings to fund it. Stat 7. The U.S. personal savings rate is currently 4.6%. In April 2020, it hit 33.8%. In under 4 years, Americans went from the highest savings rate in modern history to one of the lowest. Every dollar of that buffer spent. The 2020 to 2022 window was the single greatest opportunity in a generation. Most people spent it. They're now back where they started, except rent is higher, car payments are larger, and credit card rates are at 23%. Now, let's talk about what Americans owe and who profits from it. Stat 9. Total U.S. household debt hit $18.8 trillion, an all-time record. Americans added $740 billion in new debt in a single year. That's more than the annual GDP of a mid-sized country, stacked on top of a pile that was already the largest in history. Stat 10. Credit card debt crossed $1.28 trillion. The average balance among cardholders is $7,886. Per household with credit card debt, it's $11,114. Here's the math the credit card company is counting on you not to run. If you carry $11,114 at 23.6% APR and make only minimum payments, you'll pay it off in 22 years and spend $18,500 in interest. You borrowed $11,000. You will repay nearly $29,000. That is not a debt. That is a 22-year revenue stream, and you are the product. Stat 11. Your credit card balance isn't a problem for the bank. It is the product. The minimum payment on $11,000 at 23% covers roughly $90 of interest and $20 of principal. The bank built an entire business model around the gap between what feels manageable and what is actually happening underneath. Stat 12. 47% of credit card holders carry a balance month to month, up from 39% 4 years ago. 61% have been in debt over a year, and 48% have no plan to pay it off. Nearly half of Americans with revolving credit card debt have accepted it as a permanent fixture of their financial lives, like a utility bill with a 23% interest rate that never ends. Stat 13. Total federal student loan debt is $1.84 trillion across 42.8 million borrowers. Average balance, $39,547. About 1 in 10 student loan borrowers is seriously behind. These are not people who borrowed carelessly. Many followed every instruction. Get the degree, get the job, the debt will be worth it, and are now making $52,000 a year while carrying $39,000 at 6.5%. Stat 14. Medical debt deserves its own number. 36% of U.S. households carry medical debt. In a single year, Americans borrowed $74 billion to cover medical bills. The majority of those people had health insurance when the bills arrived. Insurance didn't protect them. It just changed the number on the invoice. 1 in 3 GoFundMe campaigns is for medical expenses. We have quietly turned a charitable crowdfunding platform into a shadow healthcare financing system, and only 12% of those campaigns reach their goal. Credit card debt you can pay off. A bad car purchase you can sell at a loss. But retirement savings you didn't build in your 30s, those years are simply gone. You can't refinance time. Stat 15. 54% of American households have no dedicated retirement savings whatsoever. No 401k, no IRA, no pension, nothing. If you have even $1 saved for retirement, you're doing better than the majority of American households. Stat 16. The average 401k balance is $148,153. The median is $35,286, a 4-to-1 gap. Even baby boomers at retirement age have a median of $210,000. At 4% withdrawal, that's $700 a month. Stat 17. Americans believe they need $1.26 million to retire. The median family has saved $87,000. The gap is $1.17 million. To close it, you'd need $1,700 every month for 25 years. The median household has $1,400 total in savings. Stat 18. Roger is 34. His 401k is $11,200. He's contributed for 6 years, but paused twice, once during a move, once when Benzie's income dried up. At his current trajectory, he'll have $310,000 at 65. The number he believes he needs is $1.26 million. He is less than 1% of the way there, and nobody has ever sat down with him to show him the math. Stat 19. 51% of Americans believe they will outlive their savings. Among actual retirees, 43% said they would rather die than run out of money in retirement, not as hyperbole, as a sincere expression of what financial insecurity in old age actually feels like. Stat 20. Social Security was designed as a supplement to retirement savings. Currently, 78% of retirees rely on it for daily expenses. The average monthly benefit is $1,976. After rent in most mid-sized cities, between $376 and $876 remains to cover food, utilities, transportation, medications, and every copay Medicare doesn't touch. This is the actual monthly arithmetic of millions of Americans who worked 40 years and arrived at a check that barely covers the rent. Stat 21. Workers expect to retire at 66 on average. The actual average retirement age is 62. About 60% of early retirees were forced out by health, layoffs, age discrimination, or caregiving. Most Americans don't choose when they retire. That decision is made for them, usually at the worst possible financial moment, usually before they're ready. Housing. The part of the American financial conversation where everyone is either lying to you or trying to sell you something, or both. Stat 22. Nearly 75% of U.S. households cannot afford a median-priced new home. It requires an income of $141,000 to afford comfortably. The median household income is $83,730. 3 out of 4 families are mathematically priced out of an average house. Stat 23. For the first time on record, more than half of all renters, 50.3%, are cost-burdened, spending 30% or more of income on housing. And 36% of full-time employment no longer guarantees that you can afford a place to live in most American cities. That sentence would have sounded absurd in 1990. In 2025, it's just a census number. Stat 24. It now takes an average of 7 years to save a 20% down payment, with no emergencies, no interruptions. The median down payment has more than doubled since before the pandemic. In some cities, the timeline exceeds 22 years. Stat 25. The first-time buyer share hit a record low of 21%, cut nearly in half from 42% in 2007. The median age of all U.S. home buyers is now 59 years old. The market that was supposed to be accessible to working people now primarily serves people who already own something else. Not one person in that real estate transaction has a financial incentive aligned with yours. They all go home when the deal closes. You go home to the mortgage. Stat 26. The total lifetime cost of the traditional American dream now totals $4.4 to $5 million. The average lifetime earnings of a college graduate is roughly $2.8 million. The dream costs nearly double what the average person will ever earn, and nearly 70% of Americans say hard work either never did pay off or no longer does. They're not pessimists, they're people who ran the numbers. The housing market doesn't care about your income. It cares about what the last comparable property sold for. Let's talk about the $772 a month trap with adjustable cup holders and a 7-year loan. Stat 27. The average new car payment hit a record $772 a month. 1 in 5 buyers is now paying $1,000 or more every month. In a country where 59% can't cover a $1,000 emergency, 1 in 5 car buyers commits to $1,000 every month on a depreciating asset. That's not financing a car, that's financing a lifestyle that quietly consumes every other financial goal. Stat 28. Here is the sentence Roger said to Benzie after signing his truck loan. The payment is really manageable. His payment is $724 a month. Over the life of that loan, he will pay $11,800 in interest alone. The truck will be worth $18,000 when it's paid off. He will have paid $63,800 for an $18,000 vehicle. This is statistically average. This is what manageable costs when you price it in decades instead of months. Stat 29. 84-month car loans, 7 years, now account for 1 in 5 new car loans. An 84-month loan costs roughly $16,000 in total interest, about $10,500 more than a 60-month loan. The payment went down, the cost went up. The dealership went home happy. Stat 30. 29.3% of trade-ins are underwater. The owner owes more than the car is worth. The average underwater trade-in carries $7,214 in negative equity, a record. That negative equity gets rolled into the new loan. So you're not just financing a new car, you're financing the ghost of the last car you no longer own. The new loan is bigger. 3 years later, you're underwater again. This is not a glitch. This is the system. Stat 31. Auto loan delinquency is near Great Recession levels, 5% of all outstanding balances. But the people defaulting aren't primarily job losers. They bought too much car for their income, and any friction collapses the whole system. Let's run the actual math on Roger's truck. Loan payments, $63,800. Insurance, $23,520. Gas, $31,080. Maintenance, $8,000. Total, $126,400 over 7 years, on a vehicle worth $18,000. Meanwhile, if Roger had bought a $14,000 used Honda Civic and invested his $724 monthly payment in an index fund returning 8% annually, he'd have $73,000 after 7 years. Nobody takes a photo of a brokerage account. They just see the truck. The car payment trap doesn't close around you all at once. It closes one manageable monthly payment at a time, until one day you're spending more on transportation than retirement. Everything so far has been about structural problems, but some of what's draining the average American isn't just the system, it's behavior. And the behavioral stuff is worth looking at directly. Stat 32. Americans underestimate their subscription spending by a factor of 2.5. The average person thinks they pay $86 a month. The actual average is $219. Separate research puts it closer to $273. People are spending $2,500 to $3,300 a year on subscriptions they think cost $86 a month. Subscriptions are financial dark matter. They exist in the budget. They have mass. You can't see them until you look. Stat 33. 55% of subscribers have at least one completely unused subscription running right now. The average waste is $200 a year. That $200 invested monthly over 30 years at 8% becomes roughly $22,000. Stat 34. The average American makes about 9.75 impulse purchases per month, spending $282 on things they didn't plan to buy. Annualized, that's $3,381 a year on unplanned purchases. This is not a character flaw. Retail environments, both physical and digital, have been engineered with decades of psychological research to override deliberate decision-making. You are fighting a billion-dollar industry every time you open Amazon with 5 minutes to kill. Stat 35. 1 in 5 Americans are doom spending, making excessive purchases driven by anxiety about the economic future. Among millennials, that climbs to 39%. The internal logic: things feel unstable, the future looks difficult, so I might as well enjoy something right now. The result is people taking on debt to cope with the stress of already having too much debt. Retailers have engineered entire product lines around precisely this emotional state. The treat-yourself economy was not invented accidentally. It was engineered for exactly this emotional state. Stat 36. Americans spend $879 per month at restaurants. Combined with groceries, total food spending averages $1,546, more than many people's rent. A significant portion isn't celebration, it's exhaustion. It's ordering delivery at 7 p.m. because you worked 9 hours, sat in traffic for 40 minutes, and have nothing left to give. The exhaustion economy is real, and it compounds quietly. Stat 37. Buy now, pay later services are used by 90 million Americans. 56% are using it for purchases they otherwise couldn't afford. 42% have made at least one late payment, up from 34% 2 years ago. We invented a new category of debt, gave it a friendlier name, and convinced ourselves it's a feature, Stat 38. Only 29% of Americans reviewed their budget in the past 30 days. Only about a third track their spending at all. 2/3 of the country is navigating financially with no systematic awareness of where the money goes. The structural problems and the behavioral ones aren't separate. They feed each other. The cycle is self-reinforcing. We've spent most of this video looking at the average person, but you can't understand why they're in this situation without understanding what's happening at the extremes. The distribution of resources in this country is not a bell curve, it's a cliff, Stat 40. The top 1% of Americans own 31.7% of all U.S. wealth, the highest share since tracking began. The bottom 50% own 2.5%. America's billionaires hold nearly double the total wealth of the bottom half of the entire country, nearly 1,000 people, nearly 170 million people, almost twice as much, Stat 41. The top 10% own 87% of all stocks. When the S&P 500 posts a record year and the financial press celebrates, the overwhelming majority of those gains go to the top 10%. Stock market records are not economic progress reports. They are quarterly updates on where the money already lives. The average American's primary asset is their home, Stat 42, the racial wealth gap. White households, $285,000 net worth. Black households, $44,100. Hispanic households, $62,120. The white-to-black ratio is 6.4 to 1. After 30 years, thousands of policies and public conversations, it has barely moved. This is not because individuals didn't work hard. It's because generational wealth compounds, and the conditions required to build it in the first place were not equally distributed. The gap persists because the starting lines were never the same. Stat 42. CEO compensation in 2024 was 281 times the pay of the typical worker. In 1965, it was 21 to 1. From 1978 to 2024, CEO pay grew 1,094%. Typical worker pay grew 26%. If worker wages had grown at the same rate as CEO pay since 1978, the median worker would earn $170,000 a year. Right now, they earn $52,000. The $118,000 annual gap is not an accident. It is the accumulated result of specific policy decisions made by people who benefited from the outcome. Stat 43. Gen Z deserves its own number. The median emergency fund for Gen Z is $400. 42% have no emergency fund. They entered the workforce during the highest inflation in 40 years, into a housing market at all-time lows for affordability. They entered carrying student loans at record balances, car payments at record highs, and every fixed cost calibrated to an economy that doesn't exist for them yet. Gen Z isn't behind because they spend wrong. They're behind because every fixed cost they face is calibrated to an economy that doesn't exist for them yet. Stat 44. The complete traditional American dream now costs $4.4 to $5 million over a lifetime. The average lifetime earnings of a college graduate is $2.8 million. The dream costs nearly double what the average person will ever earn. And here is the final number. The median American household earned more money last year in nominal terms than at any point in history. And they are more financially fragile than they were in 1990, 2000, or 2010. More income, less margin. More debt, less savings. The system absorbed every dollar of the gain and handed back a monthly payment. Let's come back to Roger and Benzie one more time. This is where they are right now. Combined income, $130,000. Savings, $1,400. Credit card debt, $11,200 at 23%. Roger's truck, $724 a month, 4 years left. Retirement, $11,200 between them. They own nothing outright. They have essentially no margin. They are two simultaneous emergencies away from a financial situation that could take years to unwind. And they are, by every statistical measure we covered today, doing better than the majority of American households. Let that land for a second. They are better off than average, and their financial situation is genuinely precarious. That's not a character judgment. That is what the median looks like in 2026. Now here's version 2. Same Roger, same Benzie, same income, same city, same jobs, but they made 3 different decisions at age 32. They bought a used $14,000 Corolla instead of the truck, saving $500 a month from the moment they drove off the lot. They put every one of those $500 payments toward the credit card. It was gone in 19 months. Then they automated $600 a month into a low-cost index fund. They didn't do anything exotic. They didn't start a business. They didn't get an inheritance. They didn't win anything. They just stopped participating in 2 of the most expensive defaults the system offers and redirected the money somewhere it could compound. They still ordered delivery sometimes. They still went on vacation. They did not move into a tent and eat lentils to optimize their savings rate. They just made 3 decisions that the majority of people around them didn't make, and then let time do the work. At 55, version 1, Roger and Benzie have approximately $180,000 in retirement savings. They've paid off most of the credit card, but it's crept back up. Roger's truck is paid off, and he's financing a new one. Their savings account sits at about $4,000, which feels better than it did, but is still a thin buffer. They're not broke, they're not in crisis, but every significant decision in their lives is constrained. Whether Benzie can take the job she actually wants, whether they can help their kids with college, whether Roger can retire before his back gives out. All of those questions have the same answer. It depends on whether anything goes wrong. At 55, version 2, Roger and Benzie have approximately $680,000 in investments. Not because they earned more, not because they got lucky, because $600 a month compounded for 23 years at a historically average market return does what compound interest does when you leave it alone. It accelerates. The last 5 years of that period added more to their balance than the first 15 combined. Benzie took the lower-paying job she loved at 47 because they could afford the income reduction. Roger is planning to retire at 62, not because he was forced to, but because the math works. They're helping one of their kids with a down payment. They still drive a used Corolla. They don't think about it. The gap between those 2 futures is not income, it's not intelligence, it's not discipline in any heroic sense. It's 3 decisions made in their early 30s and 23 years of a process that required almost no ongoing effort once it was set up. And the automation did the work. Time did the math. I'm not telling you this to give you a motivational poster. The 50 stats we covered today are real. The structural problems are real. The housing prices and the credit card interest rates and the CEO pay ratios and the retirement gap. None of that is personal failure. That is the environment. You did not build it. You did not ask for it. And the people telling you to just budget better or grind harder while ignoring the structural context are not doing you any favors. But the default settings of that environment, those defaults are not inevitable. They're just what happens when nobody sits down with the actual numbers and makes a deliberate decision otherwise. Most people never sit down with the actual numbers. The actual numbers are uncomfortable. This video is uncomfortable. That's the point. Here's what nobody in the financial industry is going to tell you. The credit card company makes more money the longer you carry that balance. The car dealership makes more money the longer the loan term. The bank makes more money the larger the mortgage. The subscription service makes more money the longer you forget to cancel. Every default setting in the financial system, the minimum payment, the 84-month loan, the 30-year mortgage at the top of your approval range, the free trial that auto-renews, is calibrated to extract the maximum amount from you over the longest possible period. That's not paranoia, that's a business model. And the only defense against a business model is knowing it exists. The only move that actually works, the one that shows up consistently in the financial lives of people who end up okay, is not complicated. Know the numbers, make a few different choices than the defaults offer, and do not stop. Don't stop when the market drops. Don't stop when the car breaks down. Don't stop when life gets complicated, which it will, because life is always eventually complicated. Just don't stop. Version 2, Roger and Benzie, aren't special. They just refuse to stop. That's not a motivational poster. That is just the math. If this video gave you something real, a number that hit, a decision you're reconsidering, a conversation you need to have, hit that like button and subscribe to Money Momentum. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to see this. We're just getting started. See you in the next one.